concern.
That's
not too bad.
Well, 428.
Mine's naval observatory. And it agrees with the cities.
So are we, yes?
I just type into the computer, what time is it? And it comes up with the official stuff.
Diana made a motion to approve the minutes as presented, seconded by
Jean.
Jean.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Approval of agenda.
We need to move number 10 to the next meeting because still don't have it from Kevin.
Who's coming to the next meeting, young lady?
We don't have it from Kevin yet, number 10, so.
Imagine that.
I know. I asked. You got one?
No.
Imagine that. All right. With that omission,
I motion.
Diana made a motion to approve the agenda. Second by Jane. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. You want a building permit?
No, she's here to discuss the property at 410 Selkirk. It's later on.
Oh,
Hi.
Okay.
Okay, so holding up right
So
now.
that's
Okay,
number
thank
7,
you.
so.
Hi.
Guess we don't have any more
It's
public.
holding right now. So that might be a good-
All right. Well,
That might be a good one.
It wasn't, didn't look that bad when I got out, it just had some crust.
I know I
At the
do.
bottom. So I don't know if that was just enough to
I'm
make
one
it.
of the neighbor.
I mean, it was pretty clean.
Sometimes you
we
can't.
just should well go right to
Did you hear what
the
he did?
employees.
I just took off and shot water out, but it wasn't enough, so I just cleaned it quick.
Checked on him.
We have the police report, actually, evidently not gonna be here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if she'll be here or not. She
Like,
was.
I have
it wasn't
that.
just flashlight like this, and all I can
Well,
think of is half of those slasher movies start out this way. I thought he'd be here.
What?
Go to Jacob.
What's up, Keith?
Me and Lyle did some digging for that infiltration this week, end of last week. We didn't find much behind, right next to Earl's to the north. We did trace that line that everybody was wondering about, where it went. We talked about that day.
Yeah.
And it runs straight to the street and then makes a 90-degree from the street, runs down. And actually that line that comes in at an angle, we went up it then, and it actually only angles for about 8 feet and then heads right up the middle of the street too. That's why it's the same line.
We
So,
didn't realize they go on the
Did
camera.
you,
you know,
did you do that with a locator, or did you have a camera?
Lyle Knoll did it with the locator, you know.
Yeah.
And I marked it with red.
It goes past the curb and gutter.
No, nope. It only goes about 8 foot at a slant and then heads right up the middle of the street, right to where that 90-degree would be. And it's only, so it has to almost run above the main.
Well, that,
Oh, it's out.
do you think that's the one that comes in that manhole down there?
Yeah, because we went up that pipe that comes in that angle, and it only goes at an angle for like 6 or 8 feet and then heads
Okay.
straight up the street to the south.
Along the side of the street.
No,
No.
out in the middle. Because that manhole sits kind of off-centered in front of Tom
There's
Kessel's.
other,
So it just goes to the center and then runs right up the center. I got it marked with red dots in the center where we located it at.
Yeah.
So apparently up by Rural Whetstones, it just comes out to the middle of the street and just 90-degree angles. It comes right down, and then once it gets about 8 feet from the manhole, it just angles right into the manhole.
So
So
it goes down along the side of the street.
more in the middle,
Off centered, but under.
almost in the center because the manhole's off-centered.
Yeah.
So this would actually be almost in the center.
But the water's getting in it after that point where you guys did.
I would say before,
Did you have a lot of water there?
there was water running in there today when me and Lyle ran up it. I mean, How much, I don't know. I mean, there was water running in it, more than I thought should have been. So,
That goes on up there to my place.
Did that show at the manhole back in the middle of the easement then? Where you measured out from?
well, it's hard to tell from there because obviously the manhole, you know, the water comes out and splashes on the, so you don't really.
That shallow one?
Yeah, we opened that and I mean, there's water running through it, but I can't really tell as much as, I mean, there's water running through it, so I mean, there's more water running through it than should be. Running through that too.
Nothing like down below them. Enough to make you think that it's getting in from their south.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, learn nothing.
Yeah. So.
Have you looked at, I was talking with Jen Brenner today, and when she lived on Perth, or not Perth, Selkirk, where Eddie has that house, his mom lives in. Eddie Taylor. Yeah. That there was water in the basement there all the time. Has that area ever been checked? Or, you know, have they run anything through there?
We've got some public present
Yeah.
now that have.
We better go back to that.
You're for later, or? We're going back and
Or are you just observing?
get you off the agenda. So you don't have to stand here all, you might be here till 8:30, 9 o'clock.
If you have something, you know, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, we can go back to this.
Okay, I have a thing. I rent a house from the Blooms, and according to Marcia, she said that one of you guys came and put a thing on the door, a disconnection notice, which was never done. I called Bloom myself, Fran Bloom, and talked to her and discussed it with her, and nothing was ever put on my door, and then turned around and shut the water off, which the bill was paid. Then I was turned around and charged a hookup fee and a disconnected fee, which was another $50 added to a bill that should not be there. That I don't feel that is appropriate because neither one of us got anything. And I paid the bill that day. Just because it wasn't paid by 10 o'clock that morning, it was still paid before 3 o'clock before the office was closed.
Okay, we're gonna need you to input on that,
What
The notice
property is it?
right across the street.
Paid at the bank after 3
202
o'clock.
Selkirk.
The bank said.
The notices are given to the guys. Did you take the notices and put them up? July 16th, July 15th is when the notices were placed.
You were putting one on Huguenot's door.
No, never. Never was nothing put on my door, nor was
July
anything put
15th
on,
was when the last notice was.
or nothing was put on the
202
Fran
Selkirk.
Blooms, because usually that's where it goes. And they didn't receive anything, nor did I.
Don't
Right by the
help
car
them.
wash.
Right next to the car wash. So another $50 was added to a bill that should not be there.
So July 15th they were placed.
I
And
disagree
then-
with that.
Then their notices say they have to be paid by 10 a.m. at either the bank or here. And it was not paid by 2, so we notified Ray on the 25th. He went and was shutting off the 3 people that were not paid. Then,
But you also
when I
have to take in
called the bank-
consideration, though, that a lot of people work and are not going to be back in town by 10 o'clock in the morning. For myself, I'm here, I don't even get back into town until 2:30 in the afternoon. But neither one of us got a notice, because I called Fran Bloom herself. Because normally, if anything's going to be shut off, that's where it goes. And then they bring it down to me. And nothing happened.
And
I called
they
to
have
verify.
10 days when they get it to get it paid.
Do we document that when we put a tag on the house?
I make a sheet, I give them the sheets, they send them all out.
Well, I'm telling you, nothing happened.
Do you guys document it, Jacob?
No, we just get the slips and then tape them on the doors.
There was nothing taped on my door, there was nothing taped on Fran Bloom's
I
door.
think maybe we need to do that.
So I guess,
She's contending that it wasn't.
so I'm here to
Oh.
see if that $50 fee that was added to my bill can be removed.
Who's utilities? I'm not on utility committee. You do?
Because normally it goes to Fran Bloom's
How
house.
many months was it?
How
late?
many months was she behind?
Well, it
And how
was,
many notices in that amount of time?
in that
None.
amount, yes. They get a bill, and then when it's past due the first time, they get a late charge added on, they get another bill. Then it gets rebilled the next month, which shows the late charges and the new charges. Then when it isn't paid again by the due date, gets another late charge, which was added on the 17th, or on the 15th. Then they get a shut-off notice also, so they get that mailed with it highlighted, plus a shut-off notice that states you have the 10 days to pay
But I'm
it
telling-
by 10 a.m., and if it's not, you have to pay the $50 fee.
But I'm telling y'all right here that nothing was ever given, because I called Fran and talked to her myself. And like I said,
The
of course,
notices were sent out, correct?
no.
They were sent
These
out.
notices were put on the doors, and yes, the bills are mailed. The bills are mailed to
Mailed
the
to
owner
who?
of the property.
Mailed to Fran. So I'd say that if you are in dispute with the $50, you'll have to take it up with Fran. The notices were sent.
But I'm telling you it wasn't.
The notices were mailed.
Well, these notices are placed, the bills are mailed.
Yeah.
But we can call Fran and ask her, because I think it's wrong.
We've been through this road before.
How is Fran Bloom? Is that
Because
one house?
they
They rent
they,
from them.
I rent the house from them. And normally it goes to them and they bring it down to me. And when I called and talked to Ed and Fran themselves, which would have been the 25th of last month, both of them told me neither one of them received anything. Because I says, I have not received anything either.
Am I correct? The late fee is on the bill like what I get?
Yeah,
And I don't have an issue with the late fee. The issue I have is the $50 charge. That's my issue.
Because they actually turned the water off at 2, because at 10 a.m. it wasn't received.
Oh,
At
Okay,
they-
2,
so
they
they
turned
I
it
was
off.
called,
through
so
there. So they've
therefore,
actually
but you're talking
Two
30 minutes, you're
notices
charging me
and a
$50
shut-off
for 30
notice.
minutes. If you would have waited until 2:30, if you would have waited until 3 o'clock, you would have seen that it was paid. That's the whole issue.
But if you had an issue with the water being turned off and you couldn't pay by 10 in the morning,
But okay, but
you
how
could
much,
have paid the day before, or the
Okay,
day
that-
before that. I
it
don't
was on
understand.
a Monday, number one. Number two, Fran or not myself never received a notice. All I received
can't
is the
believe
bill.
that. I cannot.
You
believe
would like to
that.
call Fran and ask her. I've never had an issue. And then you call up the city person and have them get mad with you and hang the phone up with you on you is not professional whatsoever. And to ask to return a phone call and it not being done is not professional.
Well, I work in a utilities company and it works on the same basis. And,
But we never received anything.
well, you can say that and say that and say that. But it was mailed, if you didn't, Fran did. And until,
But I'm telling
it's any
you,
different, you
but I'm
didn't pay
telling
your
you,
bill.
I'm telling you, if Fran would have received it or Butch, they would have brought it down to me and personally gave it to me. I would have personally called down here and said, okay, I won't be in town till 2:30. Can you wait until 2:30?
And which she probably would
Which
have.
I
Okay, but
But-
without a notice,
But what
without
I'm
a
saying, the
notice.
notices went out.
No, they
I'm
did
in
not.
full belief that they did.
I'm telling you they're not.
How did you know that it had to be by 10 because of the tag on the door?
That's what she told me on the phone.
Oh,
She told me it had to be paid by 10
and
o'clock.
when did she tell you that?
On the 25th, when I called her, it was a little after 3 o'clock, and then she hung the phone up on me, and then
I
turned
was
around
on my
and
cell phone
It doesn't
in
matter.
a DOT office
It
because
doesn't
I was
matter.
off work. She called my personal cell phone.
Because that's the number I was
Well,
given.
What I don't understand is when you receive the second and third bills.
I didn't-
You said you got the bill.
I
had late
received-
fees. and
I
you
only
didn't pay.
received, actually, I should have brought the bill down with me, the bills. The one that I didn't pay the 1 month, and the next month, and last month, I paid them both. The 2 months together,
And the 25th was on a
Monday.
Monday. That
Yes.
was the day it was turned off.
Yes, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I
Okay,
don't
but
even
you
get
talked
home.
to her in the morning.
No, I talked to her at, it was after 3, it was a little after 3 o'clock in the
Oh.
afternoon. I went to go turn the water on because I didn't see anybody down here, so I just went up directly up to the bank to pay the water bill.
But if you could do that on the day that it was too late, why couldn't it have been done before?
Why? Because didn't get paid till that day. That's why.
You get paid once every 3 months?
It was only 2 months, excuse me.
Well, 2 months? I can't believe that the notices didn't go out.
No, they did not go
Therefore-
out. And somebody getting charged the extra $50 is ridiculous.
Gene?
Well, we tried.
If you were in charge of collecting our fees for us, you would see that there's times we have to get somebody's attention. That's probably what it's about.
But sit here and
And then
I feel that people are lying and saying that they did something when they probably really didn't do it. The simple fact is, you can go ahead and shake your head. The simple fact is, Fran and Butch would have brought it down to me personally.
Why doesn't the bill go to the tenant? I don't understand.
Because that's how the city has it set up. It goes to the owners of the house. And I'm not the owner of the house. So my bill, water bill goes directly
Well,
to
that's something you need to
Fred.
take up with Fran.
But the
No,
notices
because
go
that's how
on
the
the
city's
door.
done it.
That's the policy.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
but then she needs to, if it's
Yeah,
going to Fran, they need to communicate.
and
Yeah, I think,
This,
But
The city has nothing to do
this,
with
but
that.
nobody received it, don't fly, it got
Yeah.
lost in the mail then.
exactly, well, if it got lost in the mail, then it got lost in the mail. But the
Yeah.
whole
Then
point is,
Yeah.
I'm always down
And
here to
that's
pay
not-
my bill.
That's
And
not
if-
your
if-
fault or our fault.
But if I would have known that day that's what was going to happen, I would have called down here and says, okay, I will be home by 2:30. The bill will be paid before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the $50 charge would not have been put on there.
So what you're saying is you didn't know
Exactly.
it was getting, that it was due that day.
Exactly. That's my
You
whole
just
point.
were paying.
I was paying it, and if I would have had known prior to that, I would have called down here, left the message on the answer machine that says, this is who I am, and I will be up there by 2:45 to pay it. That's my issue.
What day did you put the shut-off notice up? 16th,
15.
15th, so this is 10 days prior.
Yep, and
So you're saying that these guys didn't do their job
that's right.
and Marcia didn't do hers?
Well, somebody did do their job. I'm not saying Marcia didn't do, I said, all I'm saying is somebody did do their job. Because I personally called Fran and Bloom myself on the 25th and asked them, and her words was, hell no. She goes, I would have brought it down to you.
I'll leave it
Been
up, I'll leave it up to utilities committee.
yeah, I think
That's
problems
fine.
with the post office.
The bills need paid,
as far as I
that's
can
all,
see.
that's my, what do you?
I
Right.
think the
It's not the
console,
point of the bill not being paid. The whole issue is I'm trying to eliminate that $50 service charge that shouldn't have been there.
I'll tell you how to do that. Pay your bill.
I pay my bill,
On time.
You won't even get the notice.
but I'm trying to remove a $50 charge that was charged that shouldn't be there.
We have man hours involved, a go to and turn it off, go back, turn it back on. In a lot of cases, locating the shut-off. It's council policy.
But if you don't receive a notice, then it's not fair.
Well, then we have to get on the people that are supposed to be doing that work.
So I shouldn't be charged a $50 charge that shouldn't have been there.
Well,
That's-
I myself, I'm not calling you a liar, but I would definitely will stand behind the employees, behind the city.
Of course you will.
Marcia and all
Of course
them.
you will.
What else do we have to go on? I work for a utilities company too. We can't back down because somebody feels like, you know, I don't pay my bill for 2 or 3 months, but I make it an hour after I should and I get charged. Yes, you do. Plain and simple. It's my feeling.
It's your
What do you
feelings,
want,
and you're going to
Marcia?
stand out behind these guys, which I don't feel is right, because then here us people that live in here in this town, then what you're saying to me is that there's nobody here to back us up, to help us out, is what you're telling
I've
me.
been on the council for over 2 years now, and I've never had anyone come in to complain about something that was their error of not paying their bill, ever. So I'm not standing behind the citizens of this town, I'm standing behind the employees and
So
the bill
as
payers.
citizens, as people that live here in this community, you guys are not going to sit here and back anybody up, is what you're telling me.
No, that's not what
How
I'm
long
telling
have
you.
you lived there?
For over 10 years.
10 years?
I've
Well,
never had an issue.
last year, last fall, was it, that we passed that resolution that we would turn people's utilities off, and it was read 3 times at meetings, because it has to be read 3 times for the public, and it would have been put into the newspaper then as well. So there has been efforts to communicate the information.
I think Marcia has sent the ordinance out with notices.
To the rental property owners,
Yeah.
we've given them the notice.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why we can't copy the tenant as well, or is that just
That's not
too
the
hard
city's
for us to do,
responsibility.
or?
It's not.
We bill the the owners. and
We
you
bill
have-
them the water bill too, and they bring it to you, is what?
They usually mail it, they mail me the water bill.
Okay.
See, Marcia mails it to them, and they
Uh-huh.
mail it to me.
Okay.
I
But
think
if there's
some of-
any disconnection notice itself, Butch himself personally brings me down with the paper.
I think, pardon me, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think some of the landlords incorporated right into their rent. You don't get passed on. They
There's a
charge a
huge
certain
amount.
amount, and the utilities are included. But whatever, in order to back off, the council would have to change the whole ordinance, the way I understand it. And,
Did the other individuals say that they didn't receive letters or notices?
Nobody else, everybody else paid theirs.
That's-
or
that
they
were
got
issued
shut
that
off
same
and they-
day.
Yep. Yeah, there was a whole page. They all paid with the exception of that one on time and another one that got shut off.
I can say as a council, we push Marcia to do whatever it takes to cut down on our past dues. The total is horrendous.
Yeah.
We try to
It was
collect,
getting quite large.
and we've tried
But
to
you
bring
can't
that
take that on
money.
the people that are honest and that sit here and that pay their bills just because I didn't make it up here on time or by 10 o'clock, as Marcia said, in the morning, which most normal people that work are not home at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Telephone call.
But we
might
have
help.
to set, we
Uh,
have
wait,
to set a precedent.
Okay, then set a
We
more
have
reasonable time,
To set,
by
when
5
you were
o'clock.
2 months past due, that is reasonable.
It wasn't 2 months, it was only 1 month, excuse me.
Yeah.
Because I paid the next month that, I paid them both at the same time, it doesn't matter.
But the notice,
Way it
we
works.
have a succession of how it's done, and it was done in that succession, and I can't see that we can change that. You're saying we don't listen to the whole community. You're the only one. We cannot make an exception for one, or we have to make an exception for all, and we can't do it.
Because obviously I'm
I
not
will
going to
not
come
do
up
it.
here.
I
Of
will
course
not
you won't,
do it.
because you won't stand behind the community, you'll stand behind the council.
We're not doing community here, we're doing you.
I-
I'm not gonna stand behind you
I
paying a
would
late
say
bill
on
and
your
then say you're not
behalf,
going
it sounds
to.
like praying blue more than paying.
Well,
Yeah,
I
take
think
it
the
up
city
with
should
them.
be removing it.
That apparently that's where the lack of communication was. There were 10 days, the few hours on Monday, I got, they're neither here nor
That's not
there,
the
it's
crucial
10
thing.
days.
The
here,
10
we had
days
to
in
work on
between.
this thing, and that seems adequate.
Because anytime during the time the first month was due to when the second one was due, you could have called and said, I get paid on this date, I will have it
Oh,
in
if I would
by
have had
such and such
anything,
a time."
knowing anything was gonna happen, I would have. By no means would I have ever. But the whole issue is, I don't feel that the city did their job, and I don't feel that the notices were put out. They can say what they want to, I can say
Yeah.
what I want to. You
Okay.
guys are gonna believe whoever you want.
You're saying it went, you're saying it didn't get there.
And I'm telling you, it didn't get there. It didn't get to my house, it didn't get to their house.
We're telling you, it got sent out.
But how do you know that for a fact?
Yeah,
Did they make a copy of it? Did they make a copy of every one of their notices that they send out to have backup, to have proof? Date and stamp, this is when it was sent out, this is when it was mailed out. Where's the proof to show me?
So you want Marcia to make a copy of every bill?
If she's gonna sit here and shut off water, and sit there and say that she sends out all these notices to her people, how are you guys and for us in the community gonna know that was actually happening unless you have proof that it was done?
Making a copy is not going to be proof, though.
I
Because she
make
can
a
make a
list.
copy
I don't
and
have
throw them
time
all-
to make a
throw the
copy,
originals
nor am
away.
I gonna waste the paper. I make a
And
list,
physically-
they get them all, they take them to
And
place.
you see
Okay,
how
so my
you
question
can't-
is to you though, would be to the council, between point A to point B, how are you gonna tell me something didn't get lost?
I'm gonna tell you, I gave them to them, I'm sure that they put them up. Everybody else that was on it
I'm
got it.
just making a statement. From point A to point B, you're sitting there telling me that they're gonna hang them all up and take me to every door. So from point A to point B, how do you know that that's what was done, it didn't get lost? How do you know something didn't get dropped?
We could say that about any circumstance, in any situation, in any part of life. It's not a 100 guarantee. Right now, I'm going to tell you, as part of the utility committee, I'm standing behind our procedure, and I'm standing behind the employees.
Of course you will.
Yes, and I am as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for airing your,
Yeah,
take it into
Oh,
consideration.
trust me, there'll be a big article in the paper about it.
That's
I don't
fine.
know if we
I wouldn't
can,
put an
uh,
article in myself complaining about not paying my own bills, but that's your choice.
Well, I can just sit there and say how it was ran.
put a trace on post office.
These are ones that are posted on the
Yeah,
doors.
door.
But the Blooms get their bills, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
They're placed in their
You-
post office box.
You know before you get that on the door that that's coming if you don't pay.
They've gotten bills 4 times by then.
They haven't received anything.
Well,
You've
I got
received
mine.
bills by then 4 times.
I got mine,
no,
and I'm towards
I
the
did
end
not.
of the alphabet, so. Anything else we can do for you?
No, but I will go home and make a copy and show you the proof. The city, obviously, the council doesn't want to back up the city
I'm gonna
people,
make
but
a
that's
copy.
okay. I mean, go stick it behind everybody else.
Thank you.
Ridiculous.
Pastor Lyons,
Hi.
are you good? Aren't you glad you came?
Next.
I don't know how it is. Sorry for being late, first of all.
We have a time towards, for,
But are you at 410 South Selkirk?
No, he's
No,
at the
that's-
building
that's
permit.
this one,
Okay.
Yeah.
Your building permit, okay.
we have,
I can.
comments and suggestions from the public, we have it, but
Yeah.
towards the first, and we were a little past that, and you're gonna be a long time before we get back to it.
I think we can
So,
It's just
They're
a
talking
point,
with the problem on the lot line.
right,
Okay.
just a point of interest, or just to
Up.
make it aware of it.
I don't think anybody else is aware of what come up just this afternoon, well, this morning or afternoon. I had been up there to Reverend Lyons' place where he had intended to build a little building and cautioned him about going too far south. They kind of determined that his wood fence on the south edge of his property is probably right on the lot line exactly, or could be fudging a few inches. And I said, you gotta stay back 4 foot from that, that's going to do it. But when looking at the property, the garage they built for the parsonage is probably creeping out there on the 4 foot order too. But, so I advised him, don't go any farther than that garage for Pete's sake, and he was fine with that. But his neighbor has just come totally unglued.
But just to correct that a little bit though, even the our building permit was not for the building, we're not doing a building now. It's just to fill
For
out
the
the
cement.
cement, the
Yeah.
slab.
So what he's
And that's the only thing
doing
that's
today is just pour some cement out there for his doghouse that goes to his lot line, and then you can do that. I mean, you pay right out to the edge. The dispute is over where is the lot line. Now, Mr. Keith,
Davis.
Hmm?
Davis?
Keith Davis that lives next door claims he has 5 feet from the north side of his house to the lot line. Well, if that's the case, then the Lutheran property has crept over there a little too far. And apparently he bought that property and was satisfied with it, and now he's threatening to charge him with trespass, and I think Ashley could probably bring us up to date. And I
The
said, well,
billings
you
were
can
there
do
when
that.
you
To me,
again.
Yeah, the garage, yes.
The garage.
To me, the burden of proof is on Mr. Davis. If he wants to get a survey done and pay for it, that's a civil thing, he can do that.
Right.
The cement, to me, is not an issue.
you ever locate his, he has a problem with his neighbor on the south side, he's got time to locate.
Yeah, I couldn't locate
He
it.
took with the
No.
our new.
I found some other people that, when I was trying to find little curb stops, but I couldn't locate it.
Well, that's not a job.
The way I left it this afternoon talking with Keith, I said, you know, you can do this, it'll all be subject to an official survey. I measured it,
Yeah,
and I'm within a few inches of being right, and
Yeah.
I can tell you that it's pretty close. And Reverend Linus said too, if a survey shows that he poured the cement a little too far, he'll saw it off and put it right where it belongs, and no problem. So.
can't we measure from the inside of the sidewalk on either end of that block? And
Yeah, I did. I mean,
You got it checked, because there's been people that sold,
But give
there's some strange,
or take, you're pretty close.
I looked at it before.
There's some strange sizes on that side of the
Right.
He
street.
is going only by the fact that he owns a 60-foot lot, he has a 50-foot house. Someone told him for a fact that it's centered on the lot and he has 5 feet on it.
And that someone was Jeff Hansen that sold it to him probably.
Yeah, and I don't know how are they, how'd they measure it?
Yeah. So I, short of seeing some survey stakes, not that,
Yeah. I would let that guy deal with it. I don't think he, personally, I don't think he will. He's probably upset.
But he's upset.
But it costs a lot of money to have a survey done and do all that.
Well,
Well, the last time we talked about it was going to be 900.
Yeah.
this one's one side.
When you guys were going to do yours.
This isn't the first time we've come into this problem. Did it several years ago, and I said,
What do you think about
But
it?
I just wanted to be aware of it, I guess, and with your proximity of your measurements, we stayed back from the fence even, well, the post and another 4 inches, so probably 8 to 10 inches. So
Yeah.
Cement itself, I'm fairly confident is not, but the fence is the issue now, he wants that. taken
I
care of,
would
so.
say if you can get the size building you want and get it
We're actually not even
by
going to do it.
moving a little bit north,
He's
It's
given
not,
up.
it's going to be a doghouse now, if anything, in the pen.
He's
It's
given
gonna
up.
be-
He's
That's
given
not
up.
an
And
issue.
that was even on the building permit. I did not put a building, it was just concrete.
Personally,
That was before the fact.
good fences make good neighbors. It probably would be fair for the Lutherans and Church and Keith Davis to share the cost of locating that lot line, and everybody be very happy and not too expensive. If it come to that, apparently he bought the property and was satisfied at one time, and that's what he's thinking.
But the only way to technically find it is a survey, not any of the stakes that were there wouldn't be official. If there is, I mean, go back to
if
your, like,
you
your
can
lot.
locate them,
If there is a
they
lot.
should be there. They absolutely should be there.
With today's GPS, the man can just walk right to it. If it's there, it'll show. It's terribly simple, except that it's still expensive.
But there's no way that we can find one of the stakes on the lot without a survey.
Metal
Oh,
detector,
we
you
can
might.
search.
By measuring, if you had all the correct, you ought to be, if somebody could tell you, now, where would the front one be, Dean? At
Well,
the sidewalk or out at the curb?
There's a change in the sidewalk there.
Yeah, but where would it be?
Kind of indicates to me that whoever laid the sidewalk thought this is where it all
Yeah.
changed from this concrete to this concrete. And most of them are.
Pretty close.
And they're measuring with the wheel that came out within 6 inches of that, they're breaking the concrete.
Is the wheel a good
And
place?
yours did too. I went by your.
Yeah.
Well, let's just estimate, but you could tape measure it and get the
Yeah.
same answer.
But you figured the right of way that the city has for the street.
Yeah.
And what I do, I measure from the outside of the curb, if that's 60,
Yeah.
I split another 10, and then I start from there.
Yeah, that's what I did, and I didn't realize there was any animosities up there, and I don't think you did either.
I certainly wouldn't have
You know,
done
I
anything
bought the place.
Proactive, that's why I
fence was
asked.
there. Reverend agreed to stay back 4 feet from the fence, and I thought we were happy, so we'll just have to wait and see. But
I guess if
anyway,
anything comes up, like you said, if wrongdoing,
I
we will correct it.
Yeah.
If-
To avoid controversy, people know
Just
just
to
to
go-
north, and he can
Move
be,
it from his stake isn't
he can be a problem.
proof enough at this point, I guess.
Right.
maybe Ashton will bring us up to date when it's sort
Okay. All right. Need any
Hasn't gone that
direction,
far.
just information?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll let you on. That was going to be mine, but okay, my turn. So. Okay.
Well, I'm sure you guys got the notice on, and
It's not like we throw them in the garbage when we get them.
Marcia don't miss out a chance to send out a bill, I know that.
Well, we've had the issue with police before, so.
So, and
we'll go on.
you're 3 months behind before you get the notice, correct?
2 now, because we
now.
changed it, remember?
Changed
That
it.
was
It
part of
used
the
to be
deal when we
3.
changed that ordinance.
Yeah, but then, but the time it gets handled, you're getting close to the third one.
Yeah, you're almost where you're
Yeah.
billed again,
Well,
yeah.
right,
Yeah,
that's what I tried to
that's true.
say. It's 2 months behind basically,
Mm-hmm.
because the
And-
bill she paid ahead of time was already done by 25 days.
Yep.
She
And
had
we bill them
10
on
days
behind
from
by
the
that
time the
much.
notice was hung
You
on
know
the
that
door,
at some
which
point-
she didn't get. Blooms
get
didn't
shut
get
off.
the bill to start with.
It'd be at the house.
Hey,
so.
that stuff don't all,
It doesn't all happen.
yeah, it don't work with
So
me.
it's not
I'm
gonna- That's okay.
pretty naive. Don't swallow that big of a.
Oh, I'm gonna say, excuse me, but that paper, they're good because I have those signs on my door and those will go open the window.
They don't go away.
The wind didn't blow it.
They're very good. And I get home like 9 sometimes and it's still there. So.
Oh, you
You
should have
spoke
spoke
up
up
a little while
before. We
No, I-
needed a witness.
She doesn't seem to be too friendly, so. I might get in trouble.
Okay. Have you lost your train of thought, Jake?
Yeah, I don't know where I was at. I just was talking about the infiltration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
up
You know,
there.
Brian, I don't know if, I can't remember if you were in here, but we ran a line today up at a trace.
Okay.
And what it does is it angles, but it only angles for like 5, 6, 7 feet, and then goes straight up the middle of the street
Towards Bruce's.
towards Bruce's. And that's where it meets up, because remember, we traced it from Weststones, and we got up to the middle of the street, and we said, well, it must make a 90 degree, come right down the street, and then angles right into the...
So you're saying it goes, instead of turning north, it heads up the hill?
No. No, from Earl Whetstone's, it's running, there's a manhole behind Earl Whetstone.
Yeah.
And it runs west, right to the middle of the street. And from there, 90 degrees right down the middle. And then right in. So that, it doesn't, it's not even with the manhole's kind of off center of the street, it runs down, and then it angles right into the manhole.
Well, when we had the camera,
Yeah.
Ray was up there. You were there.
Well, we just didn't catch that
It
angle.
showed a little bend, just a gentle bend.
But it kept rolling the camera over from the water at that time.
When
Well,
we
that
come
was
from
a
the
different
north,
deal.
Oh, not from the
we
north.
could only get 140 feet.
Yep.
But like I said, we only traced, obviously his is only 100 foot long, so we probably
And
only
we had a
traced-
lot of water around.
Yeah. I'm not, yeah.
So you're satisfied you know where the line is now?
The
Yeah.
line's got to be in.
And it's hooked up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, well, I ran dye down there. Lyle was also confused because I told him I ran dye down it, last year, and told him that the dye does run out this line. So he was confused. That's why he called me today and said, let's run that line up there, because he said, I'm confused. And then, yeah, it goes out. It angles about 5 feet, and then just heads straight up the street.
That dye you put in back of Earl's,
Back girls.
come
Come
in
out
that
that.
angle and
Yep,
that's
yep.
up about 2 feet
Yep.
from the bottom.
Yep.
Well, I
That's
know
not a standard practice either.
What's that?
For a main
Yeah,
to come
yeah.
in.
Yeah, me and Lau can't figure out why they ran it that way or what they were doing that.
I asked the engineer about that, and asked if you have to get down in there and work, pick anything up.
Yeah.
You
So
like
we
to
have
have
no
it so
maps
if it's
of
coming
any
in, it's down on your boots, not on your back.
We don't have any maps of any of this stuff.
Very limited.
Not,
That one,
It sure-
that one there.
Well, it sure puts a dust on
see,
employees trying to find stuff. I mean, when you're in the dark.
you will map what you learned and record.
Oh,
what you
yeah,
learned.
I'm gonna go back in and put it in the book.
Just put it forward,
But
that's,
I think they got something else in those, payments we had made.
I wouldn't have any idea when that line was.
Like I told Lyle, it had to be before that street was laid because that's cement. You'd be able to tell if they.
oh,
Yeah, and I don't think it was, I'm trying to think if it was before the lagoons were dug. When that part of town up in there wasn't septic. It was, they were able, it's up over the hill and down to west of Ray's.
that can't.
Down in there, those people were septic tanks. And then Elmira Alderson over in that area. Schoolhouse was on, but I think the houses this way, like Vicky and Kent's.
Cat and Stewart. So I had the Iowa Rural Water guy come down today, and we just kind of discussed some things. I just asked if he had any suggestions and what he thought was good for water intake down there compared to, you know, what we're pumping. And he said most towns he deals with are up over 500%, meaning whatever you pump the water tower, you're going to take in 500% more down there. Meaning if you're taking in 100,000 there, most towns take in 500%, which they're taking 500,000 down there. Yeah, and he said if you're looking at 200% over a year's time, you're doing pretty good, he said. So,
Well, yeah.
and I, you know, I showed him some of the numbers, and I said, you know, at times we do get that, you know, big rain where it's 400,000, but I said here's generally our numbers, and he said really it's not that bad compared to other towns he's dealt with.
And also make sort of millions that can accomplish.
Yeah. And then I asked him, you know, kind of, you know, how many gallons he thought a personal line that, you know, had tree roots in the joints. And he said, you know, if you just take 3 gallons a minute, he goes, that's probably short shooting it a long ways, but just do that and then figure it out for all the houses. And he goes, it doesn't take much to add up a lot of water, a lot of infiltration when you do stuff like that. So then I asked him what he would do, what is his suggestion. His suggestion was a smoke test. But, you know, I think you guys have already done that.
Well, we didn't do the whole town.
Okay.
We quit.
Well, I think the one Marcy just alluded to on Perth, Brenner House, I think that water just flows across the floor and down the sanitary sewer. You've been there, I take it.
No, I'm talking about where when she rented there, she lived down in the basement of a house over on Perth. Trying to think which one. The one that Eddie Taylor had.
Not
Oh, that's so.
I mean Selkirk. Yeah,
Oh, that's
Selkirk.
so.
Yeah.
Oh, that's clear down at this end. That would have been the old swamp.
And the water flows
And
down
the water from the
drain,
yeah.
the sanitary sewer.
And he suggested that there probably was a field tile hooked in somewhere just because of, I told him about the old creek that used to run down through town, and he said, well, that water has to go somewhere.
Do those
I'm sure
houses
that's what
still
it is. I'm just
flood
sure there is.
Well,
in that area
like I said, we fuss over sump
when
pumps,
they have
but,
heavy
so you
rains?
shut the sump pump off, the water just runs across the floor, down the drain, and then what do we do there?
Well, that's,
Oh, really?
I've had people on the sump pump issues say, well,
That was a correct.
that guy, my neighbor don't have one.
Yeah.
And what do
Where's
they do
his
for
water
it?
going? What are you doing about that?
But we have control of that. According to our ordinances, that's illegal to allow you guys
Well-
into our sanitary sewer. So, you know, we have control of that.
So we can make them do something.
Oh,
That's what
yeah,
you're
it's
saying.
in the ordinance.
That's what's Ray here. I had Ray come in, and he's in charge of the sump pump deal. And I think we requested, when we did this survey, that every house that we visited, every basement, whether they had a sump pump or not, is that correct or incorrect?
Should have been.
Incorrect.
Is that the way you guys remember?
Yeah, that's it.
We wanted, you know, we didn't want them just to call or just to stop by and ask. We wanted the basement to be visited. And,
And then you were talking
you
about
know,
things that
if
went
water's running across the floor,
from the
you know,
house where it
make a
goes straight
notation
down.
of that.
I drove around and
Yeah.
saw
You got a sump
some
pump,
of the houses that you were talking about.
if it's
saw
not
that.
going where it's supposed to be, notify
So
them
that would be going
Yeah.
into the
that
sanitary.
they needed to pump it outside.
Is that illegal for them to do?
But we haven't ever made a decision on what we're going to do with the people that
Enforced.
Don't have some.
are letting it run across the floor. And I talk to people that know there's tile around their foundation. There's no sump pump. Where's the tile go to?
And I think a lot of homes up there on the Perth
Well-
block and all that have been tiled around it. What
No.
can we do?
Well,
I personally, I don't have a sump pump. But I didn't at any time have water running across my floor this spring.
I don't have a sump pump in either, only when we got the big flood, then we went and bought one. pump it outside.
Well,
But I
yeah,
don't
but
use
that
it,
was coming
but I
up
never-
here.
Yeah, I don't have water in the basement per se.
Well,
Well,
That's one thing we alleviated down there. We got
I
rid of
can't
that.
sir,
problem.
to answer
But yeah,
that-
Ray, when you did the survey, did you actually go in every basement
I asked,
of the houses you've been in?
yeah, I asked to visually inspect, because I told, that's what the city council wanted.
Okay, now if there was running water or if they had a wet basement, did you make notations of that?
Probably not. I mean, you know,
Have you
I
been
took-
back to see if the ones that weren't piped outside are? Now, since the last meeting?
yes, yes. The only ones that haven't complied as of the other day, last day, or whatever, last working day of July was. Jim Basinius, he says that Thompson's on his list and Schumacher's on his list. So I says, well, you know, we got to get this completed. Lana Smith has got a duplex over on 3rd Street, 412 3rd Street. Visited with her, and she, oh, yeah, I was supposed to do that, right, yeah. And says, I'll get it done in a week. Called her today and didn't get an answer, left a message on the answer machine as a follow-up. But, Harold, or Mrs. Harold Whitney, she had complied all the way last year already. Kevin O'Rourke had complied last year already. Correction, that was in January, visited there, that's when I expected it. Presbyterian Parsonage, Adam Cox, they have theirs completed and it's that house here this last week of July was. April Lang is what I got down. It says Mr. and Mrs. Lang, but I got April. Visited her the last July, and then by August 1st, she called me up, and I went and inspected that on August 1st. And that was the ones that we had listed in violation. So I'm still waiting. We're still waiting on two.
I don't know who lives there, but the old Mount Mercury house with the bomb shelter out back, have you visited that thing?
No,
I have heard the water just pours into the sanitary sewer there. Might pay to go,
I tried to,
okay,
knock several different times.
well,
it's a bombshell.
Mal had a bomb shelter in the back,
Really? That's a
underground back in there.
Where's that though?
When Gary Jenkins lived there, there was water running down that alley.
Oh, the one that
almost-
Abadesky's
Yeah,
in.
Wendy Larson lives there.
Back
But I
when
don't know if
Rush
she lives
was
there
in the
because
city.
she works in Storm Lake.
Not
That thing
one,
called
yeah.
back there.
Boyfriend.
you have to come out of
Yeah.
front of the
Who's
house.
building this
There.
60s?
I've
She
been
may
out,
not even be.
Earlier.
Yeah.
But it's the one that.
In your
the
house?
paint,
Very
you
short,
have to
yeah.
go to the
Yeah.
basement
Okay.
and then step
She has
down.
been trying
I
to
didn't
sell
know
it.
been early.
It's deep.
I can't.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of neat.
But I'll take it.
Let's have him go look, and if not, let's have Ashley knock on the door some evening and set up a time.
Yeah, I think so.
We need to know on that house.
Yeah.
One, okay.
Yeah,
Water,
I mean, we could just have her
water
stop by
don't
and say,
run down
hey,
the
we
alley
need to take a look,
anymore.
what time works for you?
yeah.
Like, it used to run down there all the time.
Well, yeah, I'd say stay with it.
Would that be in that creek area?
Yes.
Not too far off.
Not too far off the
Yeah, it's
pond.
not really in the, that's not one, it's not really in the old,
It's not,
No, it's a.
but it just might be the
that one had a lot
construction
of
of
water.
the bomb shelter might not have been.
That one had a lot of water. You should be able to see it at whatever the next.
Jenkins used to pump all the time there.
How about, have you
But I
had
mean,
time
if
to
it's
visit
going
any of
into-
the business basements?
If it's going into the city system.
I know
you should
Lobo
be able to
doesn't have
see it
one.
at the
I was down there
next
messing with him.
You know, full time.
Who's this?
Lobos,
How'd you know which house?
so.
You wouldn't. But
Yeah.
You don't
you'd
have
see
a
a lot
sump
of
pump, does he
flow
get
there.
water
if
in
it
there at
was-
all?
Die.
I don't think so. We had Vote
He's
fixing
never
it.
said.
He had Vote fixing a sewer down there and Vote accidentally hit an old water line. That it goes somewhere. We have no idea. It comes in his wall and hits. So we had to fix that. Yeah, I inspected his basement while I was down there.
Yeah, I did some work down there. Of course, it was dry when I was down.
Yeah, it was dry when I was down there. He has pea gravel down there. He put down there. He doesn't have a cement floor. He's got pea gravel, so I don't know. It'd be hard to really tell if he had water, I suppose. If it's sinking that pea gravel, I'm not sure.
Anything else, Jake?
Well,
Have you been, you've been pretty well through them all then, Ray? Did you get those two that told me you'd never been there?
Vicinius and Smith was the ones that I was.
No, I mean, these were people that you'd never been to at all. To check, to see if they had sump pumps or not. You said
Well,
that,
I'd wrapped it.
you said they probably weren't home or?
Right. Right. And in last fall council meeting, they says, well, you know, I was under the impression, they says, well, you've been to every home in Schaller, and yes, and they said, well, we've done what we're supposed to do, so that's.
They've been there, but if they wasn't home, why you didn't finish your job. You didn't go in the basement. You
Well-
wouldn't have if they weren't home.
Okay,
I think,
You had attempted
it's
it.
interpretation of.
Yeah.
I think if he's got some in mind and we can't get a time, let's have Ashley schedule us a time.
Well, I mean, if you do a canvass of the town, you check addresses, you either got into this house or you didn't.
Yeah, but what I'm saying
So I
is,
shouldn't have to tell them who the two people are.
I'm saying if we got a lot of water and I'm just using a manhole, let's say by Earl Whetstone's, and we got a lot in there and we know we got infiltration there. And you know you've missed 2 houses out of 10, we need to know what those 2 houses are doing. They might be the determining factor.
You know, these 2 houses are in the other part of town.
Yeah, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying we ought to know, you know which manholes are worse than others.
Where we're leaking more water at the swimming pool.
Yep.
Now,
How
I
does
don't know, that shouldn't have
I
nothing
guess,
like
I
that.
guess in,
How does that work where that comes from you to the pool?
Okay, there's a manhole there.
There's only 2 lines.
On the north side of the street, in the alley.
where that-
Ed, between Ed Hazeloff and.
Where that cement is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it's in the alley, it gets covered up with dirt, which is unknown, but there it is. Okay, there's pipes coming in there, the sewer pipe, the pool comes to there, you'll see it. Sewer pipe comes from my place, it's there, you'll see it, 4-inch gray pipe. And the pipe comes from the Ed Hazelhoff house. And I don't know about
And Rex, and Rex's house.
But I wanted on, well, I didn't much want on the sewer, they wouldn't build a pool with my septic tank drain bed out there, and I said, well, that's fine, let me hook onto the sanitary sewer. And so that's, I was told to go to there. And
Yeah.
I paid to pipe.
But I meant each guy has his own line.
Yeah, yeah, because the sewer there itself does not cross the street.
Wanderers goes over there.
Chris Wanderers is in there somewhere.
But it's not wet at the end of Mrs. Mobile's alley? Let's say the other end of that?
It wasn't. I haven't. When we fixed that water leak, it wasn't. I guess I
But
haven't
then
checked
when we
into the
get
water.
down to the next one, we see, not the one you dug by, but the next one
How
out.
about storm sewers or sanitary? You mean?
Sanitary.
Yeah. Well, the one behind Earl's, I mean, there's water running through it, and then there's obviously water running down the other end.
Well, Gene says there's a tile hooks in it, south of the pool. And you said you have a map. Did you know where that's at?
But supposedly that was changed when the storm sewer went up there, then they changed that. So I don't think that's that way anymore. It was when we built it.
Storm sewer stops at the street.
There's storm sewer now on the north side of the street.
Yeah. That wouldn't go up south of the pool.
I was told when they did that storm sewer, then they hooked that drain onto the storm sewer. Too hard to tell how much is coming out. Well, I know when you flush filters, then that all.
Yep.
That's maybe a person could eliminate that somehow, but I don't know. Just go into the storm sewer. We had to.
I know last year, I think we drained the pool by pumping it out into the storm sewer.
Well,
Or they used to
when
just
you
drain
drain
it
the
into
pool.
that pit.
Yeah, I was talking about when you flush the filters. That don't go to the storm sewer.
Can it legally? I mean, that goes right in the creek or whatever. If it's, you know, you got chemicals in that pool.
But it's, the law says swimmable, drinkable, fishable.
Yeah.
If it's swimmable, you know, it'd be safe enough. I don't know, we need an opinion, but it seems to me.
I guess I tend to ask the DNR before we spend a lot of money changing it. But I'm not against changing it if the DNR is not opposed.
Well, it's gonna take 180,000 gallons off of our system.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. I just don't know that they'd go along with it if, you know, those chemicals might be damaging to fish even though they're not damaging to humans. I mean, I'm not drinking the stuff. I'll swim in it, but I don't.
A lot of the times, by the time we drain it though, it's diluted enough where it's not very, the chlorine in it.
Some people pee in it.
And then you swim in it.
My grandson would
Then we
brush
turn
his
up
teeth
chlorine.
with hot water. He said, water's dirtier than my teeth, Grandma. I'm not gonna brush my teeth with that water.
A lot of times we don't empty the pool for probably a couple weeks after, and by then it's usually diluted enough. The chlorine loses its strength after so much time, and there's no more chlorine being added to it. By the time it gets out of there, it's not near as powerful as if you're swimming in it.
Right, but I could see where draining it, we definitely could, and I could see where when we flush the filters, we would have to go through the sanitary sewer. But I guess I'd like the DNR to tell me one way or the other before we.
Yeah, I can ask you that something.
Yeah. So, what's the plan up on Perth? What?
I don't know.
Well, I was with DOT while Jacob was with Lyle that same day, and I think the plan is to keep pursuing that drain tile that comes under the road. We did find that. They gave her more than positive. They came, cleaned out the ditch, cleaned out the tile inlet, traced it west till it came to the street, and instead of going under the street, there was a T there, and it went both directions. Hill toward the south, so they followed it. Sure enough, about 15 feet later, it did turn, and it went right under Highway 110, okay? So, followed it to the north, came to what had been the inlet in old days gone by. So they tore everything out that was in that east ditch. It went directly from where the tile was coming under 110. They went directly over to where that inlet is with new tile. Cleaned out all this concrete rubble, hauled loads of dirt, truckloads of dirt out of that ditch. And if you look at it, it really looks good. Okay, then the thing was, well, where does it go? So they ran steel tape under the highway as far as they could go, and they came to an obstacle. Pulled the tape out and measured it. And the obstacle is right under the red line that says, here's Knowledge's big fiber optic cable. They had located that cable when the Sherry's Tree Service tore down all the high lines. And so, theory right now is that they probably, when they underground bored the fiber optic cable, they must have went through our drain tile. So now the ball is in Knowledge's court.
Drain tile.
And they called me today and said they would be coming tomorrow and take a look at the whole project. And so Mid-America didn't want to mess with it when they found their pole sitting right over that red line.
Make it's probably, what, 6 foot off the highway?
Yeah, it's in that flower, right in that area, that flower bed that,
On that side of
Ruth
the orchardings, you'll see a flower bed. It's almost in the middle.
Yeah. And then 3
When the
feet
pole
from it.
snapped, they left even the pole there.
Yeah. So the ball technologies court would find out where that obstacle is, then we'll go west, a little farther, their property will end, and then it'll be up to us. But if we keep pursuing that tile line, we may find that it goes into the cemetery. So to me, if
But
we
there's
were-
no water going down that gate.
there wasn't at this particular time, but it just wouldn't rain.
Wait a minute, there is somewhere because it comes out
Well,
40
Blows
foot,
up, that
40
blow up,
foot
but
from
we-
roots.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
done
yeah.
it.
So,
It's flooding from there on down.
I don't know what that'd be, but maybe 50, 60 feet,
we just
all
have
of a
to
sudden
keep-
that drain runs full.
yeah.
If you take from that flower bed to where Ruth's first clothesline pole is, the line's full because it blows out of the ground. So somewhere it's hooked in.
I guess I don't think that's a city line at all, so I don't think it's a
So anyway, the day was very
city's
productive.
issue. And I want to be down to the minutes just saying I don't think that's a city line.
I don't argue with that, but if it's dumping in the wrong sewer line to the city,
Yeah.
we have a problem.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like saying though that the city should pay to have everybody's sump pumps hooked up to the storm sewer. I mean,
No.
I don't think the city wants to take that on.
It's a
No,
storm.
but we gave a commitment to the DNR that we would stop the infiltration. That was in that, we talked about
And
that.
I'm not
one.
against stopping the infiltration, but I
This is a
don't,
storm sewer.
but I don't
It's not a
think,
set-
no, it's not, I don't believe it's a storm sewer. I don't believe
Yes,
it's part of the
It
city's
takes the
storm
water
sewer.
runoff from the road, and puts it in the storm.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
The DOT is gonna get it under 110. They're
It is.
not gonna let water sit in that
That's
pit.
already done.
That's-
Except that you
To
said
the
there
break.
was a
But
block.
they're gonna get
there,
it out of their right of way and then they're not
They're
concerned with
gonna
it.
That's
continue
correct.
another 15, 20 feet. They'll clean up their end. They're being very, very.
Yeah, but from there on,
It'll be up to us to
now
go.
that's water that comes off a field, comes off a highway. That's hooking that into the homeowners up there to get rid of that water.
That's what he's saying.
Well,
Their
Well,
that's
responsibility.
probably, we don't know where it goes.
Now, they will, and I didn't get a chance today. They called, and at 10:45, they had the map ready. So he's gonna provide Jake the maps of where he believes every crossing of that road is with any pipe that the state knew of when they installed the pipe, or installed the road.
So
He
this-
made copies of that. We just gotta pick them up at, see Doug Williams at the DOT there.
Well,
Can
there's
you
another
tell
one
us if that
south.
was state installed pipe or not? I mean,
That's-
It was.
South of
It
Foreman.
was.
That's-
He knew right where it was,
Open.
with no argument.
And this one used to be.
I don't know. That's
Well, that dropped off. Before those houses were built in there, that dropped off.
To me, it'd be no different than if you go up to the estate, the Hanson estate thing you handle. If you look in that yard,
mhm.
that tile just runs out in the grass.
Yep.
And that's probably the way that
This is
was.
the way this one was, absolutely.
Now, I can't tell you Van Buskert's when they built it, or Orchardings when they built it, somebody hooked on.
Where we dug and hit the water line, because the water line wasn't out in the easement, it was across the backyards, comes from this beehive. You run right to the middle of, Tom King built that house down there.
Now,
You dug within, and that backyard is still in, Borcherding's property goes
Yeah.
way across the easement even, where there would be an alley.
Mhm.
Both of the digs were on Borcherding's property, and you were within probably 40 feet of Arlene Miller's house.
Mhm.
And that was still headed straight for her house. It's my opinion that when that house was built, they dug that basement. They hit that.
Well, I think it
Didn't route it anywhere through the years.
get back up.
It's filled up with dirt.
Yeah. Now, Larry Miller, he stopped by because his mother's house. And I told him, I said, I think you've got a potential problem because, you're the end guy. And so he was willing, if whatever we're going to do there, we notified him, he would come down, and if it took him to tile around that property,
There's your answer.
but you gotta get it to his property. So we're really talking about 40 feet.
Yeah, he's not picking up a very big chunk.
But he said, I'll get rid of the water, you know, if that's the issue.
You're gonna have to find out the depth of that.
I mean, he wants the
storm
house
sewer
dry
down
where his
there.
mother's at anyway. He's trying to
No,
correct
I
the problem.
understand that.
So if we'd have to notify him, and he left a cell phone number to call
I
him.
mean, from our standpoint, you know, and I don't know that this is even our job, but wherever that pole is that was busted off, if we just lay that pipe up on the ground and let it vent right there, you know, like it probably was originally.
Well, see, it's probably that far deep in the ground.
I don't know.
I'll
It
bet
goes
it's-
under the road.
I'll bet it's 5 foot.
About 5 foot.
The bottom of the pole's touching it, not the top.
There's quite a bit of slope.
Right.
There's quite a bit of slope there,
To
though.
pipe it over land, Scott, we need a pump. A pit and a pump,
Yeah, I don't-
because it's down in the ground.
But here's where the state said, and he had to get the map out, which is how we kept talking about the map. They're willing to correct to wherever their easement is. And if it's 70 foot width going down through there, they're gonna get that water to there. From there, it's whatever we decide to do.
I guess I'd like to see that map before we go any really further with that line.
We'll
I
have,
think we should still be trying to isolate this infiltration.
we'll have a very detailed map of what the tile line does on the 110, Highway 110 property. Then it'll be up to us to go from
Yeah.
there. But, yeah, Nology is taking responsibility at this point, anyway, because DOT didn't want to dig up that fiber optic. When I called them, they said, well, have your
That gets
contractor
expensive.
dig up 75. I said, I don't think so. I don't think they want to screw it. And Mid-America didn't want to screw it, but they just left that pole in the flower bed, didn't pull it because they had trouble with the
There's an
pole.
issue there.
So anyway,
A
now-
fiber optic and a pole and drainage.
I
don't know which one is first.
Knowledge is being very, very
That's a
forward.
shabby way of doing
Yeah.
things.
I'll
I
keep-
mean, really, to leave that pole in there. Is it dangerous if you were to fall on it?
No,
Is
they
it-
just snubbed it off at the ground, hit the flower bed.
It broke off flush.
Yeah,
And they haven't done anything with it.
but I know they firmly believe if they pull it,
They'll bring up
they
fiber
got a
optic.
lot of problems.
Yeah,
And if Nology located it,
they located.
Well, when you say though that we ran into fiber optic under 110, does the water flow from that beehive under 110 at that spot, or
the water's going this way,
Or
or
is
the
it
fiber
south?
optic's going right
North and
down
south.
north and south on Route Orchard inside. So about 6 foot over from that road, two things happen. They bored their cable this way through our drainage pipe, and Mid-American poked a hole the other way through it.
We'll find out.
Now, who's first, I don't know, but
Well, you keep calling it our drainage pipe. It belonged to the Iowa DOT, right?
yep. And so that's when Nology got
Nology
notified
taking
and said, hey, it's you
responsibility.
located,
They bought-
it's your insurance, it's
They
your
bought that
problem.
fiber, they bought that fiber from some other company that laid it. The company that laid it had a malfunctioning depth finder as they came through Schaller Island. They thought they were 10 or 12 feet under Schaller, it would miss everything. Their depth finder was lying to them, and in another half a block, the thing practically surfaced on them, and then they, oh. geez,
Down by
we
Robert
got trouble.
Hansbarger's, it almost surfaced.
Well, yeah, they broke Hansbarger's sewer line and went to the water line, a bunch of stuff. So, and then it was north of town, they drilled right through one of them. One of Mid-America's big poles, they drilled right through that cable. We know that for a fact. So there was, and this company said, we know, we inherited this, it's ours, we'll do it. We'll see. He promised he'd be.
Okay, so but it's not the cities then, right?
No, that issue is totally somebody else's. The question is, we still, to me, once that's done, we need to dump some dye in the other side, in the beehive, maybe put the fire truck up there to get enough water, and find out where it goes and see if it comes out.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's where I want to go. Then we know how far it goes. From that point, maybe Larry's got to tile it off to our storm sewer, maybe.
But at this point, we believe it may not go beyond where that fiber optic cable is, right?
No, we know it goes beyond there, but we know it's plugged to that because the cable went through it. And the telephone pole.
It's plugged right where me and Noel Dick though, right where her blowout is though.
But I think that's backup. It just kept backing up from years.
Could be, but it's plugged away because we dug, then where we dug down further too, it was plugged there too.
But that's probably not a source of
Solid both ways, wasn't it, Jacob?
At least at that point. But we need to find out.
But we do know that that water that's coming under the road that's been coming out that blowout, if it's getting into our sewer, is not getting in, piped in. It's running over the top of the ground and going down.
More than like.
So that the water we're getting now is basically coming from the south.
I'm not so sure. The other thing that I think will come into play is, that's the reason I'd like to dig a little farther up the hill. I wonder if when Van Buskirk built that house, if he tiled around that house, and that's where,
Well, see, that was
The
Bill
water-
Hanson that built that house. And we built the house. I don't remember,
Hanson?
Bill Hanson built it.
see, I'm just wondering if whoever's house that is, Ruth's or that, has got tile, and that's hooked to that tile, and that's why it's got plenty of water, because we know the road is plugged, the water coming the other way.
Well, you could probably put a cable through that and not totally plug it, but then again, it could be totally plugged too. We don't know for sure that
It's plugged at that clothesline,
It is.
tight.
It's plugged where they dug up and closed the roofs and plugged up. Jacob tried to stick a half-inch rod in there and you could only get it hit with just like a rock.
Okay.
So, I guess to me, very minimal dollars and we know digging. Because from that,
I would rather look at those maps first, and I would rather run the dye first to see if it's a part of our infiltration problem, because I don't know that it needs, that it probably even is part of our infiltration.
Brian, you want to go further east, towards the highway.
Scott's on the right track, except we have to have that fiber optic out of the hole and we have to have that pole out of the hole.
Well,
And
it
the dye
doesn't
can go
make
through.
any difference
Yeah, oh,
when DOT gets done what they're doing. That water's not going to have any place to go.
That's exactly right.
It's going to
And
be.
that's what they're saying, that we have a responsibility, or someone has a responsibility to get rid of that.
I think it gotta be up to those homeowners if they wanted to run it to the storm sewer, and I don't object if they do.
Otherwise, we've got the
We'll learn.
state running it out on top of the ground.
Hopefully they'll learn something.
Well, they're going to have to run, we're going to have to run it down the hill quite a ways for it to come out of the ground.
Jake, where
It's got to fall.
where we first
And
dug, how far
Jake's
is it
grandmother-
underground?
And Diana's mother-in-law is not going to be happy with us if we run that water back
I
out
have it
on top
written
of the
down
ground.
somewhere, I think, but yeah,
It's a ways.
I would say 4 foot because the water line runs under it. That water line.
Well, I would
it
guess
runs under
that
it,
the
then comes up.
DOT is not gonna run it and then leave it, 5 foot under the ground.
Yes, they are.
They'll go 30.
That's exactly what
That's
Brian just
That's
told
what he
us.
said, when I get to that easement,
That's-
the
We
buck stops here, he said.
They've got 33 feet from the center line of the road going west.
Well,
They
tell
got
him by the
50
end of
feet.
that easement, he better get it above ground then,
They
because
have 50 feet on the east side, and
unless
33
they
feet.
wanna run a tile line.
That's their problem.
I need to bring one more thing up while we're talking about that 33 feet. It was brought up to Ashley the other day about parking alongside that road. You know, out here by Craig Ayler's.
Yes.
You have 33 feet from the center of that road to where you can park your car, and you're within the, let's say not being on his property, that's still state-owned property. So,
There's
if they ask that again,
There's 33
You know.
feet there you can park in,
yeah, that's what she did.
between there and the middle of the
It
road.
might
Do
be
you have a
50,
problem
I
with
don't know.
Yes.
Out there, on the north side.
So, I figured that way it's clear. When
Somebody was
asks her, say,
saying
"Oh,
that
I'm
she was
sorry."
parked on private property.
Basically, yes.
And you can't do that. You got to be on public property, is that right, an officer?
She can park on my property anytime.
The point is, it's a state road, and you're allowed so much easement, just like we have an easement in the city. And she's within that easement.
Yeah, right. And as long as she is, nobody has any say so, otherwise a private property owner might have to say so.
So how Jacob's looking for a way to proceed in that First Street area?
Personally, from there, I would like to wait long enough for the pole to be removed and the fiber optic to be dealt with. Then I'd like to run the die, and I'd like to see where the die comes out. Maybe it'll come out at Ruth's.
A die down that,
Down the beehive.
that's not connected to anything but the top of the ground.
And that's fine. And
It might be
that's,
though, once they get that line out, that maybe that water goes all the way down to where that clothesline is where we dug. It's in line with it. It's straight in line with it.
Well, I'm sure that's where it goes.
So
I'll dig it.
So at that point,
Let's be sure before we start.
but at that point, we know that we can say, look, we dump it in here and it's coming out here. Now, the city or the property owners, whoever that third party is, can hook on and go to the storm sewer.
Well, and if the homeowners want to run a tile line from there to the storm sewer, I have no objection. I just don't think that it's the city's deal to do that. The city's deal would be to stop the infiltration if there is already tile line there and it is hooked to the sanitary sewer at some point. And I can see where there might be a couple of houses that are tiled to the sanitary sewer in that area, and we do need to get those disconnected.
And that's what I'm saying. So if you get that die to that clothesline, for example, where we first dug, you know you've got the problem to there. And if we hook on from there and go directly to a sanitary sewer, or whoever, whether it's Ruth or, and them other lines are disconnected, the problem's solved.
The question's going to be the expense. I mean, the question, first of all, is whether any of those lines hook to the sanitary sewer, and if they don't, it's not an issue. And if the dye doesn't come up in the sanitary sewer, we haven't really solved the problem. I think there's been enough water in the area for a long enough time to think that those are yards that may need to be tiled, and those are basements that may need to be tiled. And to me, the one house that, who was it owned it, the work
Evan
up?
Green.
Yeah,
See,
the one that Evan Green owned, that's got to be a major source, I would
see,
think.
here's the problem. Larry said, and I'm not 100% sure without him here, but when they went to put that driveway or however they did that garage, they asked Larry about, putting a tile up through there. But he didn't believe that was done, or he didn't do it. And that's his concern.
Well,
Where did that go?
Yeah,
Did Evan?
I think he's got to be tied into the sanitary sewer. I think there's a way to find that out. I mean, but that house has about got to be tied in there.
I personally think
If whoever owns that house now and whoever owns those properties all the way through there want to run a tile line, I think it's sensible. If Larry will make him a deal doing it, it might not be that expensive for him.
See, I think, and I don't know, but I think if, for example, if they took their eave troughs, let's say off that garage, and they've got them hooked in a tile, and Jacob goes up there and dumps dye in it, and it comes out in the sanitary sewer,
Yeah, and we should do that.
And we should do that.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know that they are, but I'm.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was just gonna ask if you.
But we need to do a
I mean,
little bit of.
we should dump red dye any place we can up there, whether it be in the sump pits of every one of those homes, whether it be in the beehives, whether it be, any place that we think we might be able to trace in the, infiltration.
So you're asking what would I do? I think that's where I'd start. I'd find some dye and dump in some places if you can find them there, if they're tiled into the ground.
Well, Jacob, when you dug up behind roofs and down below, that basically was in line, correct?
Yeah.
I mean,
Coming straight.
you guys were satisfied with the fact that that was the same size,
Same size and clay tile,
same breed,
clay.
and one real quick and easy way to find out where somebody's cut that off would just be continue right on to Arlene's house foundation.
That's what I was getting at with Scott.
Yeah.
About 40 feet, you'd know if they cut it off. That's
It's
why.
got to make a turn quick. And it's not deep enough to go under, correct?
No, it's only 4 or 5 foot deep.
Yep. Wouldn't nowhere near go under.
And I don't know what that would cost as well, but I'll bet it'd be very, very minimal to know exactly where it went, that 40
And
feet.
Arlene doesn't have a sump pump. She told me.
But that's not the
And her basement's dry.
Arlene
Miller.
Miller. She stood right out in her yard and told me that.
Again, we need to dump some dye. Maybe the solution is,
Yeah, the problem you run into.
But if you dump it in her floor drain and it gets in the sanitary,
That's not a problem.
that's
That's par for the
but is
course.
she has no sump?
no salt and no water. Not a wet basement.
If
She told me.
if she's sitting where she's sitting, and she has no sump pit and a dry basement, that house is tiled to
Tiled
something,
To
something,
something.
to something. The problem you run into is where would you put the red dot? You know what I mean?
So
'Cause
Mike,
you can't
we're saying,
throw it in the sump pit. There is no sump pit. So how do you know what it's tied into? Is your
So-
issue?
I would like Ray to go back up there and go in that house.
Yeah, we need.
I'd like to know if there is a sump.
Well, actually, every house right in there, see, but back to what he said earlier, my impression wasn't that the city council was necessarily satisfied. My impression was that the city council thought most of the infiltration was coming on First Street, and, you know, so we were okay with what had been done to date on the sump pumps, because unless they were on First Street, they weren't as big an issue. We definitely need to know everything that's going on in that 4 or 5 house area, you know, everything we can know about those basements, whether it's bringing in pictures or whatever, we need to know as much
I
as
would
we
like
can
to
know.
see Ray go in to, is it Tom Kessel now? Tom Kessel's and Arlene Miller's, and let's find out if they got a sump and where the sump is, and if around the outside of the house, if there's eaves going into a tile, and if there is, let's dump some dye. Let's start there.
Jay Barlow's house, I was in that basement once. It was wet. And I don't remember if it was, somebody was trying to buy it. He wanted me to look at it, see what it needed. I don't remember whether there was a sump in there or not, but it was wet.
I can remember swimming in Ted Wall's backyard.
Just tell them
Yeah.
I grew up in the house right across the street from there, and it was all downhill from
And
that
that yard, your dad's yard was wet
That
then
was
too.
wet too, and any house in that block that's got a dry basement, something's going on, and we need to know what it is. I mean, because there's just no way.
Well, I guess my question to, how are you going to address this problem? I've had people tell me they know there's a tile around the outside of their house, their foundation, footings, no sump pump. Well, you know.
Like
Well,
You
that's
damn well where the water's going.
that's a much bigger deal than a sump pump being hooked
Yeah.
up. I think, and I think that we need to tell those people to disconnect them. Now, I might make some exceptions, really, because I can see where in some houses you may not know. And unless we can see that water going into the city sanitary sewer, I don't want to guess that it's going into the sanitary sewer rather than the storm sewer. I mean, somebody might have had enough sense to tile the house and drain it right to the storm sewer system, right?
I know that
But in that area, they're hooked to something, you know.
I know that the
There's
house
few
where Jeremy
places
Petering
in
lived.
Schaller that you have an opportunity to do that without running the pipe a long way.
No, I understand it.
I was in the house where Jeremy Petering
But like
sold.
one of them would be up at, next to Matt Wandry's.
Yeah.
That would be one you could have done it
It
to.
would have had to run across the neighbor's yard.
And that house was dry, and it's hooked, hooked to a sump that goes outside.
It has a sump pit? Oh, she didn't think it did.
No. Where?
I'm talking about where
talking
Jeremy
about where
Petering used to live, Gary's old original, where they put that double wide
On
in there.
Perth.
Oh.
The answer to
Because the
that
house
is
next to
they're
it,
hooked
where Arnie King lived, I have a sump in there that runs out back, and I get water in there. So,
Yeah, I would
it's no
expect
different than
it
we're
to.
talking about, that whole thing went right down.
Right
through there.
down, yeah.
Yep.
So I'd say let's throw a little die and go in the basements of those few homes and let's find out.
What did we find out about where it would flip the camera before? Were we able to find that spot again?
Yeah, we dug that last Thursday, and there was nothing out of place, nothing out of the ordinary. I measured that 90-foot spot, and I think we dug 15 feet or so on both ends of it to make sure. Even dug a little farther, and then we ran a tape down it to see, where it went, if it curved, but from there it runs straight to the middle of the road, and we traced it all the way to there, and then we went down to the manhole today and ran a trace up it, and it runs up the middle of the road, and so they come together. So there's nothing out of the ordinary there. The only thing that's out of the ordinary is why they got it the way they got it, why it's 90 degrees in the middle of the road and that type of stuff. But as far as there being running, into a yard or anything, there's nothing out of place there.
It might not have had the depth.
See, we believed before that it turned and went down Jay Barlow's parking area.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It goes straight out to the middle of the street.
And I got everything,
And
it
turns in the middle of the
It's in the
street?
manhole.
if anybody's driving by there, I got it marked with red dots where we traced that in the middle of the street. And
Okay,
also,
then from the street it goes up east, and then what?
From where we dug by Earl Whetstone's runs west of the middle of the street, and then down that manhole. Nope, it angles about 5 foot to the southeast, and then it just turns right up and goes straight up the middle of the street.
Yeah, okay, and that's what I'm asking about. If you go from the street east, does it go up and then just turn right south?
Makes a 90 in the manhole up there.
Yeah.
Not in the middle.
No,
Yes, it does. Back at Earl Whetstone's.
Oh,
Back Earl Whetstone.
but it's in a manhole. Yeah.
Is there a manhole behind Earl Whetstone's?
Yeah, that's where it makes a 90.
That's the
head.
new one we put in.
Is that the one that has both the sanitary and the...
No.
Nope.
There's
both run in
sanitary.
the area.
There's a sanitary and storm sewer
Oh,
right next to each other. They're not hooked into each other, but
But that's
they're
not
next
the
to
one
each
that
other.
we're talking about, though. Or
Well, we dug in between that and the street. That's where the camera flipped, and then we ran a tracer to find out where it went from there west, and we traced it to the middle of the street. And then, we weren't satisfied with where it went from there, so we bought the manhole to find out where that clay tile that the discussion's been over.
But where it flipped was like so many feet east
Where
of
it
the
flipped was
street.
90 to 90 feet west of that manhole.
Of 90 feet west of the manhole in the street, or the manhole up
Behind
right?
Earl Whetstone's.
Okay.
they dug it up and exposed it. I was there, and there's nothing there.
No service line.
There
nothing
was
coming
another
into it.
It had to be
sidelines tied into it.
Just a
right?
fluke that the camera.
Earl Whetstone says he thinks his line runs
I was there.
straight east and runs to the back.
Not to the front.
And same with Armin's.
So is Armin. He thinks his goes to the back.
They don't go to the front or to the side. Earl doesn't. He goes straight back to the east and runs back through his backyard.
And then does
They didn't have to tear the street.
the manhole where the two are put together, do those both tie into that same manhole in the street, or do they go down?
There is no manhole. We're at 90 degrees in the street. There is no manhole for the sanitary. That's why we can't figure it out, because when you 90 degree, usually there's a manhole.
Something you just don't do
Oh,
in
I
the
see.
sewer. You do not.
Yeah.
But does that run to a manhole behind Earl Whetstone's, or the two that are all?
It comes from Earl Whetstone's, behind there, runs to the street west, and from there at 90 degrees north, down the street to Tom Chester's.
Okay, that makes sense, but then those two manholes that are together, that sanitary sewer line doesn't tie into that manhole that's on the street right there, it ties to a manhole.
Well, there's a manhole that's off the street there. It's on the side of the street. That's a storm sewer. It's probably 3 foot off the street. There's no manhole in the middle of the street there.
For the storm sewer, you're saying?
For either.
Manhole.
There's not a manhole there for either.
All the storm
Is there a
sewers have that.
manhole for the sanitary?
We have an intake.
Back on the corner of the Hanson property where those two lines are so close together, there's two manhole covers there,
One's
right?
storm and one's sanitary.
The one to the east is which, sanitary or storm?
The one farthest to the east would be sanitary. The one to the west would be storm.
Okay, and so that sanitary one on the east side would be tied into the next manhole it would be tied into is where?
Tom Kessel's.
Which the one where we saw the water coming in, that's not Tom Kessel's, right?
That's
Tom
Tom.
Kessel's is down
Corner of
further.
Tom Kessel's.
That's Tom Kessel's.
Evan Green's old house.
See, there's like four
But you
pipes.
say there's one behind Earl Whetstone's. Is there a different one behind Earl Whetstone's?
No, that's the one
That's
you're
the
talking
one
about.
You're talking about behind Earl Whetstone's.
We just put that in.
There's some tile up in that storm sewer somewhere out there, 'cause this one down here never quits running. It can get awful dry.